They thought they were just digging up a hill. No one believes what they found inside. In the summer of 1939, on the eve of the Second World War, a wealthy landowner in the quiet countryside of Suffolk, England, acting on a strange hunch, hired a self-taught local archaeologist to dig up a series of mysterious ancient mounds on her property. The professional archaeologists from the National Museums dismissed the project, believing the mounds to be worthless, already looted by grave robbers centuries ago. But what this amateur duo was about to uncover was not a simple grave. They were about to find the ghostly outline of a massive, ocean-going ship buried in the earth, the treasure-filled tomb of a lost Anglo-Saxon king, a discovery so rich and so sophisticated it would completely shatter our understanding of the so-called Dark Ages and rewrite the history of a nation. But before we start our story, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit that notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new, incredible stories. To understand the profound importance of this discovery, we must first journey back to a mysterious and misunderstood period of history, the Anglo-Saxon era of England, a time often referred to as the Dark Ages. This was the period that followed the collapse of the Roman Empire in Britain from roughly the 5th to the 11th centuries. For a long time, historians viewed this as a brutal, chaotic, and culturally barren period. It was seen as an age of illiterate warlords, a time when the light of Roman civilization had been extinguished, replaced by a primitive and unsophisticated society. This perception was largely due to a lack of evidence. Few written records from this era have survived, and the archaeological finds were often meager and unimpressive. It was a dark chapter in history precisely because it was so difficult for historians to see into it. The incredible discovery at Sutton Hoo was about to turn on the lights. Our story's protagonist is not a rugged adventurer, but a woman named Edith Pretty. She was the wealthy owner of a large rural estate in Suffolk known as Sutton Hoo. The estate was home to a series of 18 strange man-made burial mounds, which had been a feature of the local landscape for over 1,000 years. Edith, a woman with a keen interest in history and spiritualism, was deeply curious about what or who might be buried beneath them. In 1938, she decided to act on her curiosity. But instead of hiring a team from the prestigious British Museum, she chose to hire a local man, a self-taught archaeologist and astronomer named Basil Brown. Basil Brown was a brilliant and dedicated man, but he was not a member of the academic elite. He had no formal university degree. His immense knowledge of the local soil, history, and excavation techniques was earned not in a classroom but through decades of hands-on experience. The professional archaeologists at the nearby Ipswich Museum and the British Museum in London looked down on him as a mere amateur, an untrained digger. But Edith Pretty saw in him a kindred spirit, a man with a deep and intuitive connection to the land. She hired him to begin the excavation. In the summer of 1938, Basil Brown began his work. He excavated 3 of the smaller mounds. While they had been looted centuries ago, he still made some fascinating finds, including the remains of a Viking-style ship burial and some tantalizing Anglo-Saxon artifacts. The results were promising enough that in the summer of 1939, with the storm clouds of war gathering over Europe, Edith Pretty gave him his most ambitious assignment yet, to excavate the largest and most impressive mound on the entire estate, a massive earthwork known as Mound 1. Basil Brown began the painstaking work of clearing the soil. This was a delicate and methodical process. He knew that the acidic soil of Suffolk would have likely dissolved any human remains and most organic materials, like wood. He was looking for the subtle clues left behind in the earth. He dug a trench and began to slowly and carefully remove the earth. And then he found the first clue. It was a piece of metal, an iron rivet. A few feet away, he found another, and then another, and another, all in a strange, repeating, and deliberate pattern. The professional archaeologists from the Ipswich Museum had told him he was wasting his time, that the mound was just an empty pile of dirt. But the pattern of the rivets was telling him a different story. He cleared away more and more soil, following the ghostly pattern. The line of rivets curved, forming the unmistakable outline of the hull of a boat, but it was not a small burial boat. The pattern continued, stretching on and on. As the full scale of the pattern began to emerge from the earth, Basil Brown felt a surge of awe and excitement that he would later describe as the greatest moment of his life. He was looking at the ghostly imprint of a massive 90-foot-long ocean-going ship. The wood of the ship had rotted away centuries ago, but the iron rivets that had held its planks together remained, suspended in the sandy soil. He was not just digging up a burial mound, he had discovered a full-blown Anglo-Saxon ship burial, a royal tomb on a scale that had never before been seen in England. The discovery was monumental, and he had not even reached the treasure yet. The news of Basil Brown's incredible discovery, an intact Anglo-Saxon ship burial, sent shockwaves through the British archaeological community. The leading professional archaeologists from Cambridge University, who had previously shown little interest in the provincial mounds, now descended upon Sutton Hoo. In a move that remains controversial to this day, the self-taught, working-class Basil Brown was largely sidelined from the excavation of the ship's central burial chamber, the place where the treasure, if it existed, would be found. A new, professional team took over. As they began the painstaking process of excavating the chamber, carefully removing the sand inch by inch, they realized that Basil Brown's intuition had been correct. The grave robbers had missed it. The treasure chamber was untouched, a time capsule sealed for over 1,300 years. What they began to unearth was the single richest treasure trove ever discovered from this period in European history. They found a magnificent sword, its hilt and pommel decorated with intricate gold and garnet cloisonné. They uncovered a massive, ornate shield, also of stunning craftsmanship, a testament to the kingdom's international trade connections. And then there was the gold, a spectacular, heavy gold belt buckle, its leather pouch long since rotted away but still containing a collection of 37 gold coins, one from each of the major kingdoms of the Frankish Empire. And most stunning of all, a pair of massive, hinged shoulder clasps made of solid gold, but the most iconic and most mysterious artifact was found in fragments. The team uncovered hundreds of small, rusted pieces of an iron helmet. At the time, they didn't know what it was. The pieces were carefully collected, and it would take decades of painstaking work by conservators at the British Museum to reconstruct it. The discovery of this treasure completely rewrote the history books. It shattered the old, condescending view of the Anglo-Saxon era as a primitive and isolated Dark Age. The sheer quality, craftsmanship, and international origin of the artifacts proved that 7th century East Anglia was a wealthy, powerful, and highly sophisticated kingdom with far-reaching connections to Scandinavia and the Mediterranean. The art was not primitive, it was a masterclass. The culture was not isolated, it was cosmopolitan. The Sutton Hoo treasure was a burst of brilliant golden light that illuminated the so-called Dark Ages as never before. But the discovery left one profound, lingering mystery. Who was buried here? The acidic soil of Sutton Hoo had completely dissolved any trace of a human body. There was no skeleton, not even a tooth. However, the final, ghostly trace of a decomposed body. Based on the incredible wealth of the grave goods, historians are now almost certain that this was the tomb of a great king. The leading candidate is King Radwald of East Anglia, a powerful ruler who died around the year 624 AD, and who is one of the few Anglo-Saxon kings mentioned by name in the historical records of the time. As the team was completing their excavation in the late summer of 1939, the world outside was plunging into darkness. World War II had begun. Edith Pretty, the landowner whose curiosity had started it all, now made a decision of incredible patriotism and generosity. As the legal owner of the land, the entire priceless treasure was hers, but she knew it did not belong to her. It belonged to the nation. She chose to donate the entire collection to the British people. In a race against time, as the threat of German bombing raids grew, the priceless treasure was hastily packed up and transported to London, where it spent the entire war hidden for safety in a disused underground tube tunnel. After the war, the treasure was finally put on display at the British Museum, where it remains to this day, a stunning testament to a lost age of English history. It is a story of a brilliant, self-taught archaeologist, a generous and curious landowner, and a treasure that waited silently in the earth for over a millennium to tell its incredible story.